Welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. It's me, Joey. Paul's in the house.
What's up?
And we got our good buddy, Kieran Lefebvre. How you doing, man?
Yo, what's going on, guys?
Good to have you, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, before we rip in, well, today we're talking about eating, and we're talking about eating for muscle gain, eating for weight loss, and also eating for performance. Kieran's going to be breaking that down for us. Before we rip into it, just wanted to let you guys know we got the JB Games coming up. I can't tell you the date for that.
19th, I believe.
June?
Next month. What's that,
Holy
June?
shit, yeah, June. That's the day. It's like the Jungle Brothers Olympics. Soon to be the Jungle Botany Olympics.
True.
But that is happening. So it's a members thing. So if you're in the tribe, know that you will need to be performing on that day and you need to come for beers afterwards. It's probably the second most important event on the tribe calendar behind the Christmas party, would you say?
They're equal. They're very different things. They're the two pillars that hold up the whole gym. Don't worry about the training.
It's true, they are.
This really, they take the limelight.
But you absolutely cannot miss it. That or the Christmas party.
Christmas party is fairly infamous, just from the social media.
You saw some pics?
Exposure. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Christmas party. Man, I mean, usually we keep that shit locked down. We don't want anyone to see what goes on in there.
Understandable.
But this time we're like, the world needs to know what we're doing this year, the Burning Man theme, Bushdorf.
Yeah, it's pretty legit.
And it was like raining out there, misty, people in costume. Like it was something special.
Agreed. I just look out the window and pause.
The question is, what the fuck are you guys going to do this year to make that even better?
Well, T says we do the same thing again, but we combine the two gyms.
That's a good call. T will have about 3 members.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're all coaches.
Yeah, sick. So keep an eye out for that. And guys, thank you for listening. It's good to have you here. Kieran.
Yo.
I'm gonna do a little intro about you, and then you can do a proper intro.
Sounds good.
I know Kieran from Jiu-Jitsu. You signed up at Alliance where I train. Shout out to Ads, our coach.
Hey.
You signed up there, I don't know, like a year ago?
Yeah, in October, so just shy of a year. So I think I'm in 8 months now.
Okay, cool.
Quick math.
Well, whatever, we'll train together. And then we started doing a bit of work together because you also have a business. We do videography and video
100%.
editing.
Yeah, Ground On Productions.
Ground On
that
Productions.
piece. Yeah.
Okay, sick. And so you've been helping us out with some stuff here at Jungle Botany, but then also for Bulletproof for BJJ, which I do with JT. And that's been awesome. You've been helping us with produce some really cool stuff there. But behind all of that, you've been a nutrition coach the whole time. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just explaining to Paulie just before we hit the record button, but I started my journey, I suppose, in the whole fitness and nutrition world, as many people do, as an online PT. So about 4 years ago, I started that endeavor. And that sort of stemmed from, a background in amateur bodybuilding, which I'm more than happy to get into, particularly with the topics that we're going to get into. It will be pretty relevant.
All the fucked up stories?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
All the messed up stuff that can happen to you in that space. But so I got into, being an online PT and that, and through that I started looking into nutrition. And I suppose leveraging off my background in amateur bodybuilding, nutrition is like 80 to 90% of the work. And so that's where my real passion sort of was. And so I pivoted probably about 2 years ago into almost exclusively just coaching nutrition. So yeah, I'm a man of many talents, I suppose.
And you are, I guess it was remarked when you were here, you were shooting some video at our recent Coaches Intensive. And I think when you left the room, one of the guys said to me, Jesus, man, even your videographers are jacked. And I was like, he's a thick dude. Yeah. And very lean. You stay in good shape. You still obviously, like, training is a huge thing for you, and you still adhere to some very strict but tight guidelines when it comes to your own nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, you only need to ask my girlfriend about this, but I'm very robotic. I tend to be stuck in my ways in so far as once I pick a nutrition plan, I formulate my nutrition plan, and then I'll stick to it for about 3 or 4 months until it stops working for me, and then pick another one, I suppose, and write my own nutrition plans like that. But yeah, I do maintain a lot of, I suppose, habits that I formed in the early days of bodybuilding. But then I've taken those to a more, I suppose, sustainable place. So I'm happy with where I'm at But what I try and do is, impart that sustainability. It's a big part of my coaching now. In the early days of coaching, I was a little bit more, I suppose, rigid, and just give like, hey, here's the nutrition plan, stick to it and you'll get results. If you don't, then, can't help you. But now I take a more sustainability approach and like, hey, these are the guidelines, but if you're having trouble with a certain element, let's talk about that and let's see what we can do. So
yeah. That's probably better, because I would imagine that a lot of people struggle with it, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, nutrition is the hardest part in my experience of someone's, weight loss journey. It can be something that it's kind of like a catalyst for weight loss journey. If you get it right, it can really expedite your progress. But if you get it really wrong, it can pretty much grind it to a halt. And so finding a way to not only, tick the boxes, so to speak, and to get the right, macros and calories and nutrients, but also I suppose the elephant in the room would be to make it sustainable. Because a nutrition plan is all well and good, but nutrition adherence is just as important as the nutrition plan itself.
Yeah, we say that in the gym a lot, that and for personal training, it's a bit of a mantra. It's like, it doesn't matter how well written your program is. If the person that you've written it for doesn't show up and do the training, then the program's shit. Like it doesn't achieve anything.
Yeah, you got to make it fun.
So it's almost better accepting, perhaps compromising on certain things within the program in order to get full adherence,
100%.
Which means they get the best result.
Nutrition is exactly the same. Because if you can, I've preached this one to you before, Joey, but if you can get your nutrition adherence around 80, 90%, you're doing a really good job.
Right.
And that's going to get you results. Now, when it comes to, the upper end, the upper echelon of athletic performance, a little bit of a different story, but, obviously this isn't pitched at that. You're working with a different ball game there. But when it comes to everyday, athletes, someone that, takes their training seriously or has a particular goal in mind, 80 to 90% adherence is, if we can get you there, you're going to do well.
What does your client base look like at the moment? People looking for weight loss or sports performance, or what's the kind of spread?
Paulie, my client base has always been really quite diverse. I suppose though, in saying that, over 60% or around 60% of my clients are looking more toward weight loss, specifically fat loss. But I am working with a couple of, I suppose, amateur bodybuilder sort of aspiring in that direction. I'm working with some more people geared toward athletic performance in the jiu-jitsu space. But yeah, so...
You're looking at me? Is that me?
Oh, yeah. One of, yes.
I'm on a plan.
Are you?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been following a nutrition plan from Kieran for a couple months.
Yeah, it's been about 2 months.
2 months, yeah.
In the lead up to the comp.
Yep.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm on weight. I had to drop, I needed to drop I didn't need to drop 5 kilos, but I wanted to drop 5 kilos to be comfortably on weight for the competition, which is this Sunday. So I hit that, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago.
Just been coasting.
So I've just been kind of cruising at around 85.
Yeah. How do you feel?
I feel good.
And how was the cut over the last few months?
Man, pretty fine.
It's pretty fine.
It's pretty fine. It was really just the only thing, and for folks out there,
Joey used to eat burgers every night on Fridays.
Every night, guys. Spaghetti.
That's every second night.
Thickies on Fridays.
Bags of ice cream. Bags of ice cream. Mix it up a couple of things there, eh?
He gets it by the bag load.
These little bad boys. No, I know what to eat, right? And I don't, I tell people what to eat.
Yeah.
Often, or I suggest what they could eat. But I was like, it's going to be handy just to have someone write a thing out for me, because I'm more likely to follow it.
Yeah.
So that was the whole idea of getting Kieran to write me a plan.
Psychological thing.
Yeah. Like, I pay for it. I ask him to do it. He gives it to me. I'm like, this thing has value. This plan, which is, a few pages that are printed out. But yeah, it's been really good. The main things for me were being prepared, because typically if I'm not super prepared, it's okay. Like, I know where I can get decent food at the cafe, or where like that sort of thing. But the plan kind of made it like, it's gonna be hard to work if you're eating at the cafe most days. Or most lunchtimes. So I was like, all right, I got to have that stuff already planned. And then the other part of it was fasting in the mornings, which was actually not an issue at all, but was just a thing. I'm like, this is different to what I'd normally do. So I wasn't eating breakfast. I was waiting till about, lunchtime, 2 o'clock kind of thing.
How'd you find your energy levels fasting?
Fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine. Some days, if I'd had a big training day the day before, like the day after training evening jiu-jitsu, I noticed I felt a bit depleted in the morning. It was probably a combination of things though, right? It's like feeling a bit beaten up from training, never really sleep as much as I'd like to. And then not being able to eat was like, fuck, I really want to eat.
Yeah.
But it's probably more just I'm tired.
Yeah, 100%.
But I got to say, anytime it was fine that time, and anytime I have fasted in the past, I feel good. I train just as well. My intensity is just the same.
I sympathize with you. I know what it feels like to just want to eat,
Paul is the guy that perpetually wants to eat.
No, it's changing. I'm getting older and it's changing. But it's funny because yesterday we have a lot of meetings. I come in Thursdays a little later, have the kids in the morning, and then I do some floor work. I'm doing some PT, and then we have these double meetings. And yesterday, this is, it happens every now and then, I don't eat in the morning, so then I don't actually get to eat till 2. And they say when you're
fasting.
Yeah, and I don't mind doing that at all, and I'm just having a bit of a laugh. But everything was in the way of that meal, and I had it on my mind, and I'm like, I am. I'm kind of a little sharper, and I'm more efficient. I was also kind of rushing things. I was like, get out of my way.
Let's get to lunch.
Let's get to lunch, guys. Let's get this done. Yeah. All right, can we be more efficient with this meeting?
Yeah.
Forced efficiency.
It really is. It's kind of nice when you decide, okay, I'm going to fast in the mornings, because that time you'd spend eating breakfast, you get back to do what you need to do, work or sleep or whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
What's the common benefits of that? They say for a lot of people, you have a clearer, less cloudy mind in the morning.
Yeah, a lot of people do experience that as a flow-on effect, like a symptom, if you will, of fasting is being a bit sharper. I personally experience it. I do intermittent fasting, 16 hours approximate intermittent fasting. I'm not as rigid as I used to be with it, but around about 16 hours and an 8-hour feeding window. And what I find...
Daily?
Yeah,
every
daily.
day?
Yeah, pretty much every day.
So you don't do breakfast on the weekend with the missus?
No, only on occasion when she, puts it in my calendar. But normally I'm eating at around about 12 o'clock. But the reason that we geared toward that, in Joey's case, why I recommended the intermittent fasting and why I recommend it to certain clients is because it helps with caloric restriction. If you're eating less calories and you're used to eating, 3 square meals, when you're eating 3 square meals spread out over, a 12 to 14 hour period, you're going to get hungry. And that's when, the nutrition plan gets more difficult because it's a psychological thing. You're constantly hungry. But if you elect to go with intermittent fasting and you aren't eating until about 12, then you only really need to be worried, if you will, about or thinking about food for that 8-hour block. So, all of a sudden your 2,200 calories feels like a lot more because it's compressed.
And it was, I can 100%, confirm that I was like, man, I got to get through a lot of food today. I've just eaten lunch and it's a couple hours later, I got to have this thing of yogurt and fruit and and then it's snack and then it's dinner.
Yeah.
Because you are compressing what is, it's a moderate amount of food, right? It's not starvation by any means. But you're compressing it into that short space of time. So, yeah, it really does work quite well.
Definitely helps quite a lot.
So, yeah, bro. The six-pack is back thanks to Kieran Lefebvre.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Show me later.
I will. I'll show you right now.
For a while. Get around it.
Stand by, guys. It'll be on my Instagram soon. So tell us, we want to talk about those sort of 3 different realms of eating. So we're talking weight loss, weight gain, and then performance. And I guess for people listening, they generally fall into one of those camps. I would think the majority of people I speak to, who come through our gym are like, I'd like to get rid of a little bit of weight, right? Carrying a little bit too much body fat or more than they would like to carry and want to get rid of some. So I think that's really the main, that's where the most amount of people are going to be like, okay, cool, talk to me. I think for males, it's more common to be like, I want to put on some mass, and usually 100%. It's like I want to put on some muscle, right? And maybe there's a corresponding, I'd like to put on some muscle but burn some fat, right? So there's a bit of a middle ground. And then I suppose the athletic performance thing is probably, less, speaking less to our people. But I think it's important to kind of cover that, just to give people a bit of context, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's I think you summarized it really well. I suppose I personally, in my mind, I break it down into 4 sort of categories and subcategories. The first, as you mentioned, is weight loss, and that's where I see the vast majority of my clients, about 60% of my clients, come from that space. They want to lose a bit of weight, which respectable goal, right? The second one, as you mentioned, there is muscle gain or just weight gain in general. That's your, I suppose, stereotypical lad. Just started lifting 6 to 12 months in the journey, wants to break that 80 kilo barrier or whatever whatever goal they've got stuck in their mind. And then the third is one that you mentioned that is actually quite difficult to pull off successfully, and that's body recomposition. That's the concept of losing body fat whilst maintaining or gaining muscle mass. And that's definitely when we're talking about body recomp, we're talking mostly about bodybuilding space or really just aesthetics. Talking about someone that wants to look good rather than feel or perform well. And then the fourth one, sports performance, athletic performance, and that's a different kettle of fish altogether. It has the same sort of principles, but it's quite different in the approach. So I suppose...
Can I just ask on that?
Yeah.
Before you dive in, people would, I'm guessing for a lot of folks listening, it's like, yeah, but if you isn't the picture of health lean, muscular, for a guy six pack, whatever, are you, and then you take a sport like bodybuilding or figure competitions or whatever, where it's supposed to be the presentation of that.
Yes.
But then what you're saying is but then eating for performance is a different thing. You're but shouldn't that be the best performance when it looks like
performance? Yeah. That's quite a spicy one. So from an outsider looking in, sorry, Paulie.
Can I just say, when we're talking performance, are we talking bodybuilding performance? Is that a generalization? Or are you talking about a rugby player or anything? Okay,
soccer
sure.
player,
Cool.
jiu-jitsu player, along those lines, or even endurance sports.
And there's a spectrum within that.
100%. And then there's subcategories within subcategories. It breaks down. It gets really nuanced.
Okay, sorry to disturb. I just thought, are we talking about?
No, it's a good clarification. But to the point of, from an outsider looking in at bodybuilding, particularly the amateur scene, they do look like the epitome of health. But it's not always the case. For that short period of time, all you're seeing is a snapshot in time. A lot of these people, they're not walking around looking like that from a day to day. I'm not saying that they're, looking completely different, but you got to remember in context, you're getting your body to a state for that 1 hour while you're on stage, and that's it. So what happens, without delving too much into the science behind it, but what happens when you do diet yourself down so hard to get on stage for athletic performance is your body goes through a bit of a topsy-turvy with your hormones, your ghrelin, your leptin, or your hormones that regulate your metabolic processes get thrown out of whack. And the problem is when you do that for a long time and you go deep into the rabbit hole, those changes can last a while. And I'm just talking from personal experience. I dieted down and stayed there for probably a little bit too long. And the recovery phase for my hormones to start regulating correctly was about 12 months. So
Wow.
It doesn't really lean itself toward athletic performance. It just looks like it.
Or health.
Or health. Yeah, I suppose that's probably a more accurate way to say it.
How long did you spend in the upside down world?
So I probably spent, I think, including my prep for the first show and then the subsequent back-to-back shows after that, it was about 8 months in total. So just shy of 12 months, really taking nutrition seriously or not even seriously, I'd say just robotically. Everything was calculated to the gram. Everything was very meticulous, which did give me a lot of good tools. But when you're inexperienced with nutrition and that's all it can start to dip into some, muddy waters, I suppose. And my hormone levels definitely did get a bit out of whack. Like my testosterone did drop quite a bit and a couple other things. But back to the point is that's got nothing to do with, I suppose, just your general person wanting to lose weight. So for those clients, for someone that comes to me and they say, hey, Kieran, you know, my goal is to drop 15 kilos. I want to do it over X amount of time, and I want to do it, you know, approximately half a kilo to a kilo a week. And say maybe they're in the...
Is that a moderate expectation?
That's an ambitious goal. That's definitely someone that needs to be pretty accountable to themselves and stay on track. And it's depending on the body composition, depending on the individual, but that's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Okay.
To lose about half a kilo a week,
Yep.
it's definitely fine. Particularly if you've got a fair bit to lose, right? If you're in the, maybe obese or overweight category, that can be, you know, definitely achievable goal. So say someone comes
and so you're saying 15 kilos, half kilo a week, 30 weeks. It's, you know, it's a decent chunk. It's like 2/3 of a year.
Yeah, it's steady. It's pretty steady progress. Maybe toward the end you might slow down a little bit, which is to be expected.
Yeah.
But there's ways around that. We can, you know, tweak things here and there. But say I'm dealing with a client that, you know, comes to me, they want to lose a bit of weight. So if they want to do it just utilizing, exercise and they don't really take nutrition into account, that's not really my specialty, but, you know, you're more than happy to do that. But if you really want to, I suppose, catalyze the process and make it a bit more efficient, then utilizing some sort of nutrition strategy, whether it be a, you know, nutrition plan, because I hate the word diet, I just avoid that. If it's something like a nutrition plan or, you know, healthy eating strategies, it will definitely assist in speeding up that weight loss. So I suppose if you guys want, I can talk about the process of what I do on the back end, how I would, you know, figure that out, calculate what to do with that person.
Yeah, that'd be mad. You don't have to give away all your secrets.
It's not really secrets, but I'm more than happy to go into it. So
I'll probably stop you just to get some definitions on
100%.
when it gets a bit sciencey, just so folks can make sure they're following.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I do is, you know, similar to a standard PT questionnaire and waiver, you know, someone fills out whole bunch of questions. So I get all their body stats, everything that they can give me, and then their experience. Do they have any allergies? Do they have any, you know, underlying conditions? Basically, I'm going through an elimination period of what I'm not qualified to deal with. Once everyone passes, you know, all those boxes are checked, then I grab their numbers and I basically put their numbers into some form of TDEE calculator. So TDEE is total daily energy expenditure. That's the baseline. That's the bedrock that everything is built upon. That's where all the magic happens, if you will. So if you want, I can get into a little bit more in depth of what TDEE actually is. So your total daily energy expenditure, as the name implies, is the amount of energy that you burn in a day, that your body utilizes just to function in a day. So it's made up of 4 subcategories. The first one, which is the largest of the 4, is your BMR. A lot of people probably heard of this before, basal metabolic rate. It's the easiest way to explain it for those that don't know is if you were to lay in bed and you didn't move, that's the amount of calories that you would burn. So you
were alive.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is quite a lot for it's all of these processes of you being alive.
Yeah, 100%.
Which I think for the untrained person, they're like, well, you know, that couldn't be much, but what is it like?
60 to 70%.
Okay, of your TDE.
Yeah, of your total daily energy.
That's very interesting, isn't it? To think
yeah.
about like just your breathing and your fucking hormone system and immunity and all of that.
Yeah,
costs energy
brain,
all the time.
Yeah, and I think out of that, your brain takes up about 20% of those calories.
Wow.
So your body is constantly burning calories, even as we're talking right now. Taking not into account our moving and the actual talking, where
I can feel it. Six packs out and come through.
You feel the burn. Yeah,
You've just justified people who just wear fitness clothes as a daily,
100%, yeah.
but aren't working out. They're working out, man.
Yeah,
Burning cows here at the cafe.
I'm happy to talk. I'll burn more cows when I talk.
Yeah, so that's the first category of your TDEE is your BMR, and that's a big one. So the second is probably the next largest from memory is your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, don't let the sort of sciencey terms confuse you. Basically, it's just all of your moving around. So talking, even fidgeting, like, you know, fidgeting your fingers, moving your legs.
Blinking and shit.
Blinking, yeah, just moving around, gesticulating with your hands, all of that good gear. That's all NEAT. And of course, walking as well. The whole movement behind people getting the 10,000 steps in a day is to increase your NEAT. And funnily enough, it's the second most amount of calories as part of your TDEE, second to BMR. So
it's like movement that isn't exercise.
Exactly. All movement, yeah, exactly. Your next is your your thermic effect from food, or TEF. So this is your body when you eat food, you digest it. right? Everyone understands that concept, but it requires energy to break down that food to get access to the energy. So you're burning energy to digest food. Now, out of the three macronutrients of protein, carbohydrate, and fat, protein takes up the largest amount of thermic effect from food. It requires the most amount of calories to digest. But compared to the other two, it's not, it's not something that you shouldn't just eat protein to get more TEF.
Not that significant.
No, it's that's a rabbit hole you can get into. So I just wanted to clarify that one. Don't get into that rabbit hole. So that's that's the TEF, and that's the third of the four. And the last one is your EAT. Which is your exercise activity thermogenesis. And depending on the individual, this can actually be the lowest out of the four. So yeah, this one can be pretty variable. Now, when it comes to dealing with athletes, this one can be quite substantial and significant. But when it comes to a sedentary person, obviously it's going to be pretty minimal.
When you're saying an athlete, are you talking about someone that's a professional, as in they train, every day, multiple times? Or are you talking like someone who trains most evenings during the week after work?
Definitely the latter. So if you're someone that trains most evenings, then you will have your EAT will be enough potentially to put you into that calorie deficit.
But boom. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
but boom. So and again, it depends on how many calories you're consuming. But when it comes to losing weight, all you need to be this is a good segue, I suppose. When it comes to losing weight, all you need to be is in a calorie deficit.
Right. So calorie deficit, meaning you are eating less than what your TDEE.
100%. So that's why we start with that baseline.
What is just to clear up? You don't have to tell us the exact scientific definition, but what's a calorie?
What's a calorie?
Yeah.
So
because we actually use kilojoules in Australia, right?
Yeah. So kilojoules is approximately like 4.18 grams of calorie. It's basically it's energy, right? It's a unit of energy. So if we use kilojoules, we understand kilojoules. I suppose it makes a lot more sense to use kilojoules.
No one uses it. Everyone uses calories, right?
The reason being, most of our food on packages, it comes from the States. They use calorie or kilocalorie, so we tend to lean toward that. But if we use kilojoules to try and explain a calorie, it would probably make more sense. So a kilojoule is like 4.18 of a calorie. So it's the amount of energy within a unit.
Right. It's 4.18.
Yes. And I think
of that. Right. So 1 calorie equals 4.18 kilojoules.
Yeah. It's like the amount of energy required to heat a certain volume of water by 1 degree.
Yeah. I think it's a centimeter cubed.
Yes, that's it. A centimeter cubed by 1 degree is a calorie. So it's a unit of energy. That's all it is.
So, okay, cool. So the calorie is like the most, or calorie or kilojoule, but for the sake of this conversation, we stick with calorie. It's also easy because it's a smaller number, isn't it? So you're throwing around less thousands and more hundreds.
100%.
But it is a very simple measurement of the energy content of a food.
Exactly. That's it in a very succinct way of putting it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Or energy content. It's of the
energy.
food or of your output.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. So calorie deficit. So really explaining this on simple terms is eating less than you're outputting.
Yeah, eating less than than you're burning. That's it.
Okay, so what sort of calories did you have me on? 2,400?
Yeah, I believe it was 2,400, and we were going with a fairly modest around. I think from the top of my head it was around a 400 to 500. I think we ended up going with a 400 calorie deficit.
Okay.
Or even actually probably was about 500 calorie deficit, and that was utilizing pretty modest conservative numbers because we wanted to get the results. So every day that would have fluctuated, but you would have averaged out to be at about 500 calorie deficit per day.
So based on that, my total daily energy expenditure was on average around 2,900.
It's just shy of 3,000.
So I'm eating 2,400 each day, which just means there's just that slight deficit there that is allowing me to be in a place where I'm losing weight, losing body fat.
Yeah, losing. Well, we'll just say losing weight in general. Yeah. So we can't. In your case, I can't guarantee that we didn't lose any muscle because we didn't do.
I told you I want to keep all the muscle.
Yeah, but we didn't do any in body scans or anything like that. But
it's true.
So
but with the
you wouldn't have lost much.
I look bigger. That's the main thing.
Yeah, you definitely look more.
The definition has gone up.
A lot more juicy.
Okay, because I think like calorie deficit that it gets thrown around in fitness a lot, and we say it. But I think for a lot of people, they hear it, they're like, what does that actually mean?
What does that mean to me? Yeah. Where does the rubber meet the road, so to speak? So,
okay. Very cool. Now tell me this, and I know that this is a tricky one, but when we're talking about foods, obviously calories that come from one food, that there's calories in chocolate.
Yep.
There's calories in spinach.
Yep.
Now, obviously, chocolate is higher in carb, higher in sugar, higher in fat.
Yeah.
So it is higher in calories. But let's say, you know, how do you, based on that discussion of energy in, energy out, how do you reconcile calorie as a calorie?
Yeah, so this is a really, really good point. And as an analogy, if you were getting ready for a bodybuilding competition and you built up to a good volume of muscle mass, so you were happy with your muscle mass on your frame, all you wanted to do was to cut body fat percentage. In theory, you can achieve that by just eating McDonald's. So that lends to the whole point that we were talking about before, where just because you may look like a bodybuilder doesn't mean that you're actually healthy, right? So not all calories are created equally is a good phrase that I like to throw around to sort of explain this. So if you are eating foods that, you know, like just smashing chocolate, Ben and Jerry's, you know, going to
Peanut M&Ms.
Yeah, all of that goodness. You can, in theory, you can lose weight. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like shit and your body's going to hate you for it. So when we're saying, you know, not all calories are created equally, obviously food is more than just energy, right? When you're eating food, yeah, it's energy to fuel your body, but we're also talking about nutrients, vitamins, minerals that accompany that food. That's why it's really important, particularly for people that are interested in longevity, health, and performance. It's important to eat a wide variety of foods because you're going to get a wide variety of nutrients that accompany the calories.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So then when you're preparing, say, a plan, you're looking at the energy piece, but then you're also looking at the food choices piece.
Yeah, 100%.
Which for me, obviously, you're like 2,400 calories, but also here's the meals I want you to be eating, and these are the foods. And there's like all the healthy foods, fuckload of vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, that's the goal. Another reason which you sort of just touched on, but I want to expand, is the reason that I always include a lot of like lower calorie foods is to increase volume and fiber. So fuckload of vegetables, you're going to increase the volume, particularly when you're in a deficit. It's going to keep you full for longer. It's going to satiate you. And protein will actually do that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, so to paint that like a practical picture for people, fuck, I had a hard time getting that one out. You could have, like, you could eat, I don't know, you could have a piece of toast with like avocado and fucking ham and cheese on it. Or you could have this enormous bowl of salad.
Huge salad, yeah.
With leafy stuff and vegetables chopped up, and then you could have olives through it and maybe a little bit of cheese and then some chicken or something like that. And this huge bowl of salad perhaps has less calories than that piece of toast with a couple of things on it.
Yeah, 100%.
Simply, but it has more bulk.
Yeah,
And
it's more volume. It's voluminous.
Voluminous.
Yeah.
My mum used to like the word, what did my mum say all the time? Roughage. My mum always used to say roughage.
A good one.
You need to eat more. It's good roughage.
Sound like a rabbit.
Fucking yeah. But yeah, that makes sense. And so that fills up your stomach.
Yeah.
Takes up a lot of room. Once it all breaks down, there's not actually as much going on.
Yeah, 100%.
But it serves that purpose of you're like, wow, I'm having this big thing and I feel really satisfied.
Yeah. So if you're in a deficit, it's really important to pay attention to your fiber content and the volume of food. Because if you're feeling hungry all the time, it's probably because you're picking calorie-dense foods that you enjoy, that you probably should be going more voluminous foods. But there is a flip side to this. What if you're the person that wants to put on weight? And if you're trying to select quote-unquote healthy foods and you're going for these voluminous foods, it's going to be a lot of calories to get down. Because some people out there that are trying to lose weight, they may think, you know, they may not believe this, but some people do struggle trying to get in the calories. So they have the inverse problem. And I work with those guys as well, guys and girls as well, generally guys. And yeah, so for that approach, you want to take the opposite. You want to select calorie-dense foods. You want to be selecting, the nut butters and the avocado and the olive oils and things like that to increase the amount of calories you're eating.
Yeah, it makes sense. So say, just going back for a sec, for the person who wants to lose weight, they got this big fucking salad thing.
Yep.
Or they got like a cheeseburger and a small Coke and a small fries at McDonald's.
Yeah.
that cheeseburger, small fries, small Coke packs a shitload of calories, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's the issue there? Like in terms of someone eating that, like I'm trying to lose weight, but I just have that. I got small. I normally order large.
Yeah.
How is it that food can pack so much energy in this small space?
It's generally because of the fat content. Like fat, 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories, which compared with carbohydrate and protein, 1 gram of carbs and protein equals 4 calories. So when you're eating something,
It's over double.
Yeah, it's over double. So fat is by far the most calorically dense of the 3 macronutrients. So when you're eating something like Macca's or chocolate, without getting into, you know, the reward system, like getting into the science of, you know, that combination of fat and sugar.
Tastes so good.
Yeah, it tastes so good, and your body like responds to it with a dopamine hit.
Feels so good.
Oh yeah, it feels real good until like 20 minutes after. But without getting into all of that nitty gritty, in a nutshell, you're eating a very calorically dense food, and the reason that you're putting on weight with it is obviously it's more calories than the salad, and you're going to feel hungry after it because it's not taking up a lot of space in your body.
And you'll feel hungry because your body will digest it quickly?
Yeah, your
because
body.
it's like soft food, like it doesn't provide a lot. There's not much fiber there.
Yeah, and you're also getting almost like a craving, because you just got a dopamine hit, right? You say, for example, you eat a chocolate bar. If we take back to evolution in the wild, if you will, when a human came across something like honey and they ate that honey, that's very rare. So their body has built-in reward mechanisms to reward them for finding the honey and smashing down a whole shitload of simple sugars. But these days, simple sugars are everywhere. They're so abundant that it's not a rarity anymore. So that built-in, I suppose, evolutionary mechanism doesn't serve us, but we still get the trickle-down effect of the dopamine hit for consuming those foods. So that's a big problem. And that's another reason why when you eat something like chocolate, all you want is more bloody chocolate, or at least I do.
Yeah, your physiology is geared towards have more of that.
100%. Yeah. So like sugar cravings are a real thing. Like it's not that you're weak and you don't have self-control or whatever. It's a legitimate thing. The strategies to get around it, but it's, you need to be acknowledged, I suppose, and heard in that sense.
Yeah. All right, so take us to the flip side, which is want to put on weight.
Okay, sick. So if you want to
Fuck
bulk,
yeah, let's talk about muscle.
Check the timeline because you'll have to mark that in the show notes. Yeah. When do they get the lean muscle mass section?
Put it in the timestamps.
In the timestamps,
When do I bulk? Shit, bulking for stereo. Okay, so so when it comes to putting on, you can tell like the I suppose the tone shift because not many people are really wanting to bulk. It's more so, look, the stereotypical client here is, like I mentioned, you're 70 kilo dude, wants to put on 10 kegs of muscle mass and just started lifting weights. So in this case, we're looking for not only a calorie surplus, but we want to make sure that we have enough protein. So in the whole the weight loss moment when we're speaking about that, I didn't really mention macros. It's important, but not the main star of the show.
Give us a little breakdown of the macro piece.
Yeah. So we got the 4 macronutrients. You have your protein, carbohydrate, fat, and technically alcohol. So already mentioned the calorie breakdown for the other 3, and alcohol, funnily enough, 1 gram equals 7 calories. So alcohol has calories. Sorry. But when it comes to macronutrients, depending on the goal of the individual, we have a different macro split. And I suppose if you take calories aside, that's the biggest difference between eating for weight loss, eating for weight gain, eating for body recomp, and eating for athletic performance is the different percentage of your TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure, that you break into the 3 macronutrients. So each goal will have a corresponding macro breakdown for them. So when it comes to putting on muscle, when it comes to putting on just weight, we're looking at being in a calorie surplus. So anywhere from, you can go into a crazy calorie surplus if you wanted, but the problem is if you go too fast, then you'll probably just put on too much fat too quickly. You won't give your body enough time to really grow the muscle that you're after. So I'd probably recommend anywhere from 250 to 500 calorie surplus for bulking.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you calculate your TDEE, and then you add about 500 calories on top of that, and that's the amount of calories you need to hit.
Okay, so if we're looking at the two examples, then if let's just take a hypothetical guy. Let's say his name's Joe. Let's say maybe he wasn't that big growing up. Got into weightlifting a few years ago. Wouldn't mind getting a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
What are we going to do with Joe?
Yeah. But want to lose weight, like a 500 calories less
Yep.
than TDE. Wanting to gain weight, 500 calories more.
Really good ballpark figures. Yeah.
Okay.
So you eat 500 calories more. Now, if you really want to get into it and you want to, okay, what does this look like? Let's formulate out a plan. Then we look at macronutrients. So when we take our macronutrients for protein, that is the first macro we address. Protein is always first. And I generally, once I've set the protein, I leave it. I don't manipulate it for someone's nutrition plan. If I need to change anything, I'll change the other two, carbohydrate and fats, before I'll touch protein. So with protein, the ISSN for athletes and for...
ISSN?
Sorry, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, they recommend about 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. The actual window that they give is anywhere from 1.5 grams all the way up into in some research suggests that 3.2 grams is ideal, which is a lot of protein.
A lot of pro-y.
Yeah, 3.2 grams for fat-free mass. So it's not quite 3 grams per body weight, but it's getting up there. But
Okay, so 2 grams is a nice, easy number to work with.
absolutely.
So
And you can't really go wrong with it.
For an 80 kilogram person,
160.
you're talking about 160 grams of protein per day.
Which generally speaking, you're looking at just shy of 30% of your total calories coming from protein, which is about right.
Okay.
Can you give people a little an image of what like how many grams of protein are in a steak, say, just so they can?
Yeah, okay. So let's take 100 grams of steak. Rump steak, 100 grams will be about 32-ish grams of protein.
100 grams is probably it's not a lot.
No,
It's like the size
no.
of your palm.
Yeah.
Like maybe a centimeter thick steak. Like
Yep.
it's probably, what would the average serve be for someone that's
About
eating?
200 grams, yeah.
200, yeah.
Yeah.
Even 250. Like if you went to a restaurant, a small steak would probably be about 200 grams.
So that might be 60 to 70 grams of protein
Yeah.
in that one thing.
Yep.
And for someone like Joe, say at 85 kilos, that's less than half of what he needs in the whole day.
Yeah. 100%.
What
Into
about
the protein shake.
say eggs? I was surprised to find that eggs are not actually that protein dense.
Yeah, they're not protein dense, but the protein that is in them is very bioavailable. So,
Right.
and it has a very good essential amino acid profile. So eggs are actually a really good source of protein, but you're getting a lot of fat accompanying those eggs, obviously, particularly if you're eating whole eggs, which the yolk is mostly fat. And that's sort of why people sometimes just eat the egg white, but I recommend eating the whole egg.
I was doing 3 whole eggs plus 2 egg whites.
That's a really good combo, yeah.
Yeah, it felt good.
Yeah.
What do you do with those 2 yolks?
Give them to the dogs.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Ivo and Jazz love them. Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have dogs, I probably wouldn't do that because it feels incredibly wasteful.
Yeah, you can buy egg whites in a carton, and that's what I was doing when I was bodybuilding. Because I had similar sort of, one of my meals was very similar for a period of time there. It was like, about 3 eggs, whole eggs, and some egg white on top. But yeah, so that's protein. Once we've addressed protein, the next macronutrient we tackle is fat.
Just on that, why is protein so important?
So protein is essential for your muscle growth. And there's actually some research to suggest that it's the most important macronutrient for when you're cutting as well, because it maintains your muscle. But to the bulking phase, what is someone wanting to do? They're wanting to put on weight, right? Most of the time, really what they're saying is they want to put on muscle, but the number on the scales is, they've got it in their head that it's important to them. So they want to put on weight. When we're putting on weight, we want to make sure that we're giving our body enough protein to support the growth of muscle. So you put on more weight, you can move more weight, therefore you can create more hypertrophy, more muscle growth. We need the essential amino acids to support that muscle growth. So when your body consumes protein, it breaks down that protein and a whole bunch of enzymes get released in your digestive system, and it breaks down the protein into the substrates of amino acids. These amino acids are what makes up protein. So they form together in long chains and they make protein that then our body uses to grow muscle. So that's it in a very simplistic nutshell.
Okay, makes sense.
So that's why I always start with protein.
Start with that, and then And I cut you off then, leading into fat.
Yeah, 100%. So next we move into fat. With fat, again, the ISSN, the International Society of Sports Nutrition for Athletes, recommends 30% of your calories to come from fat. Depending on who you talk to though, and you know who you're looking into, where you get your information from, you'll find this recommendation anywhere as low as 15% to as high as 40%, unless you're getting into keto realm, which is a whole nother ballgame.
Is that recommendation for any one of the goals or for this goal specifically?
So depending on the individual, for someone wanting to cut, sometimes I go, again, it depends on how much weight they have to lose, their body composition. I sometimes go as high as 40% for those individuals. But a nice, if just to speak to as many people out there as I can, if you're just going for a ballpark figure, 30% is a really good number to go with for your fat consumption. So 30. The way you get that is to take 30% of your TDEE and divide by 9. That will get you give you how many grams of fat you need per day.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So fats are fairly simple. Now we can get into what fats to choose, but so long as I would recommend gearing more toward my recommendation for protein insofar as choosing a wide variety of fat sources. So you're looking at mono unsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated fats. So go toward a diverse array of fats and you'll be pretty safe with those.
Did mono and polyunsaturated fats get a bad rap for a while?
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose each of the different fat sources have their time in the limelight for getting a bad rap. Even as recent as like saturated fat has gotten some bad flack fairly recently as well. So
yeah, they're trying to tell me bacon and shit causes cancer. Fucks with that.
Yeah. So I mean, this came from a very significant and very large study that looked into heart health and fat consumption, and basically this sort of accompanied the whole like vilifying meat. If you remember, red meat got a really bad rap. It's essentially because of the content of saturated fat. So yeah, that was the World Health Organization funded epidemic study that basically looked at a series of meta-analysis, which is basically, for those that don't know, it's just a review of multiple studies, and they found that animal products, because of the saturated fat, have a higher rate of heart disease and certain cancers. So, I mean,
there was a correlation there. How much of a correlation, and how they're tested, like how those studies were conducted, is the other thing to look at.
And I mean, there's been literally like 3 to 4 hour long podcasts on the Joe Rogan experience about
and they got nowhere.
So they got absolutely nowhere. And there's that's definitely a rabbit hole.
That's cool. And I mean, we don't need to go into that, right? Because I think it's cool that we are looking at it from more of a global perspective.
Holistic.
What sort of calories do you want? And then people can slot their own food choices into that.
100%. Yeah. And that ties into, I suppose, like empowered choice. Like, I'll point you in the right direction and give you my recommendation. But at the end of the day, it needs to be sustainable. Like it needs to be, you need to eat something that you enjoy. If you're trying to eat food you do not enjoy, like, good luck to you. It's going to be very, very difficult. But once we've got fat down pat, and the 30% of our calories are coming from fat, more or less, and then the third and final macronutrient is carbohydrate. So this is pretty simple. All you do is subtract your protein calories and your fat calories from your TDEE, and boom, you've got your carbs.
What you're left over with.
And if we follow this process, if we go about 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, you go about 30% of your calories from fat, you're going to get approximately 50% from carbohydrate.
Yeah, okay. Works out around that.
Works out around 50%. And again, it depends on the individual, but yeah, 50% is the ballpark. Yeah,
okay.
And for athletic performance, funnily enough, that is one of the best splits you can go with.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, so tell me, with that split, I think you said before, the split changes for someone looking to gain weight versus someone looking to lose body fat. How does the split change?
So when it comes to, are we talking about losing weight or?
Let's say getting rid of body fat.
cutting fat whilst maintaining your muscle mass, we call that body recomposition. This one is super variable to the individual.
Right.
So this is if you're looking at body recomp, I highly recommend working with someone that has a bit of nutrition experience or professional to help you dial it in.
Because it's very hard to
get it right. Like
get rid of body fat, but keep all of the muscle mass.
It's the most challenging.
Right.
Out of when compared to just bulking or just cutting, what people understand is like bulking and shredding for area, that sort of stuff. Body recomp is the most difficult, and that's sort of where I spent most of my time trying to coach clients into, is that body recomp phase. The reason it's so difficult is you have to imagine you have competing forces here, right? I said that so long as you eat, more calories than you're burning, you put on weight. But whatever that weight looks like, it's fat and muscle. If you're eating less than you're burning, you're going to lose weight. What does that weight look like? It's fat and muscle.
Right.
What we're trying to do with body recomp, we're trying to achieve both. We're trying to reduce fat whilst maintaining or increasing muscle. It depends on the individual where you're at with your training career. It depends on what approach you need to take and what sort of results that you're going to get. And this is definitely the bodybuilder style approach. Bodybuilding, getting ready for a bodybuilding show is essentially recomp, and it's kind of like a race against the clock. How much fat can you lose without trying to maintain as much muscle as possible?
And why is it so hard to do both at the same time?
Well, it's competing forces. It's quite easy. Well, I mean, theoretically, it's quite easy to put on weight because you just need to eat a lot of calories. And it's quite easy, theoretically, to lose weight. Or I should say simple, not easy, because you just need to eat less calories than you're burning. But when you're trying to do both competing forces at the same time, your macronutrient split is essential to get correct. And that's why we start with protein, because out of the three, that one is going to be very important to make sure we dial in your protein so that we're giving your body all of the amino acids to support your muscle protein synthesis, your MPS, and sustaining your muscle throughout the cutting phase, throughout your fat loss. So,
but for folks listening, like wouldn't you just think that, well, what if I just eat shitloads of protein, and very little other things, and I stay in a calorie deficit, but I make sure I'm getting heaps of protein because that helps with muscle growth?
Yeah, I can see where people would draw this conclusion.
So, what other mechanisms are at play there? Is there something that changes internally when you are putting on weight versus like when you're in a calorie surplus versus being in a deficit?
So I think the reason that you can't just, carnivore dieters will disagree, but the reason that you shouldn't or probably shouldn't just eat a shitload of protein and go for gold is because if you are eating protein in isolation and you're not eating any fat or any carbs, you'll probably die. Now, if you just ate protein, you're not getting any fat to support your hormones as well. So particularly when we are cutting, like I mentioned when I sort of was touching on about my bodybuilding experience, it threw my hormones out of whack. That was because of the calorie deficit, but it's also because of the reduction of fat intake. So if you're not eating enough fat, you don't have enough fat to support your hormones. And I mean, your cells are literally made of fat. They're made of lipids. So you need to make sure you're getting enough fat. But also,
how much fat were you eating at that time?
Off the top of my head, I think I was on a high carbohydrate, low fat. So I think I was around 10 to 15% fat.
Yeah, right. Which really, I'm guessing you probably
didn't
didn't
on the low side,
have any fat source. Like it was probably just the fat from whatever protein you were eating.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And there was a little bit of nut butter at the start, but fat was one of the first things we eliminated to reduce calories. So I'm talking a lot about bodybuilding here, but when you're prepping for a show, you want to reduce your carbohydrate and your fat as well. And you do carb first and then fat as required.
And that's just for that leanness.
Yeah.
To look tight, shredded.
Yeah, the reduction in calories has to come from somewhere. So you don't touch protein, you do it with your carbs and your fats. But just to go back to the point of, why you can't just eat protein or why you shouldn't just eat protein, you also need carbohydrate for energy as well. Unless you're going full keto and then you get most of your energy from ketones, as in so for example, your brain, the energy source that your brain likes the most is, funnily enough, ketones, and that is basically the body's defense mechanism on how not to starve to death, through creating some form of energy for your brain to operate. So say, for example, you're a hunter-gatherer, you haven't eaten for a few days, your body will start producing ketones to keep you moving, keep you alive.
Right, because you don't have any sugar left.
Yeah, you don't have any
glycogen.
carbohydrate, 100%. So your glycogen stores have reduced. But I mean, if you just eat protein, and this is why the carnivore diet is out there, don't run out of glycogen or run out of glucose, is because of a process called gluconeogenesis, where your protein is converted into carbohydrate substrates of pyruvate, and it uses that pyruvate and lactate to then give you energy. So it feeds that into the metabolic cycle, and then that's how you get energy.
Right, so it works really hard to make sugar or a sugar-like substance from the protein.
Yeah, so when carbs are broken down, you get substrates out of that, and then those substrates are fed into your metabolic cycle to produce energy, ATP. The same process can be done with protein. So through gluconeogenesis, you can create energy out of protein. But in excess protein, you can also create lipids out of protein. So
right,
yeah.
I heard a funny analogy about it once. It was a bodybuilding. Oh no, he was like a nutrition guy. He works with bodybuilders, and he specializes in working with athletes who are juicing.
Yeah, right.
So he's the guy when it comes to steroids. His name's Broderick Chavez.
Okay.
The evil genius. Don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
But he was saying he was on a rant. He was doing this presentation, but he was ranting about keto, and he's like, when you are dying and they take you to hospital, they don't plug fats into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
He's like, they plug sugar into your bloodstream because glucose is the absolute best fuel your body can get.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's a really interesting point. Like this perspective that like, oh, it's bad for us to be fueled by carbohydrates. He's like, no. It couldn't be anything more natural actually.
Yeah.
But that doesn't speak to necessarily how people can play around with that, doing something that is very specialized like keto.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna respectfully bow out of getting into the weeds with keto.
Fuck 'em.
Fuck 'em. That's opening such a can of worms there, and I've gotten in trouble on the internet in the past with those arguments. So.
Keto, for folks who are listening, is a diet that's really high in fat.
Yeah.
And moderately high in protein, is it not?
Yeah.
And it excludes carbohydrates, and they got some very strong views around all of this stuff.
Yeah. So in a nutshell,
it's extreme, right?
Yeah, it's very high fat, moderate to low protein, and very, very low carbohydrate. So less than, I believe, 25 grams or 50 grams total per day, or less than 25 grams excluding fiber for carbohydrates. So that's the golden standard, I believe. I have tried it. Like I'm not gonna just shit on it without trying it. I have tried it, but it's personally not for me. So
I feel you.
Yeah, I just bow out of that one.
So, Paul, you got any questions?
I was going to say, how long did you try that for?
The keto?
Yeah.
About 8 weeks. I know that depending on who you ask, you have to go through a keto adaptation phase.
That's why I asked. Okay. Yeah. And what is that phase generally?
Again, Paulie, it depends on like who you're following in that niche, in that sphere, and everyone has a different opinion. I've heard like you need 6 weeks. I've heard people say you need like 6 months. So
sure.
Yeah. There is some science behind the keto adaptation where you can get to a state where your body is utilizing ketones effectively and you're using carbohydrate as a fuel source effectively, and you're sort of like a hybrid. And I suppose athletes, like if you guys have heard of Ben Greenfield, he talks about that sort of dual approach as well. And the way he achieves that is no carbohydrate through the day and then a carbohydrate refeed each night for his athletes.
Because you can't get into this state where you're producing the ketones if you have carbohydrates.
Correct.
Right? So you have to keep that down.
Yeah. So it turns off the mechanism that creates ketones, because it's our body's, I suppose, defense mechanism for how we get energy in absence of carbohydrate. So by combining the approach, though, if you're fat adapted, which basically means that you go into that mode of creating ketones more quickly than someone that is not fat adapted, then you can effectively achieve both. But very similar to like recomp in the keto world, I suppose, that is difficult to achieve unless, of course, you're having endogenous ketones, as in you're consuming like a ketone ester or a ketone salt supplement. Yeah. like
It
Peru or
sounds like
something.
fucking hard work.
Yeah, it really is.
So tell me on the sort of fad diet piece, and I think not fad diet, someone who chooses to go vegan or like extremely plant-based,
Yeah.
based on what we've been talking about, what are the challenges they face? Because our perspective with nutrition here at JB's is like, man, eat seasonal, choose whole foods wherever possible.
yeah.
Eat in a way that's right for you, like know how to cook food.
Yeah.
But then also eat appropriately to what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So, and it's, we've got a lot of people that train in our gym who are vegan.
Yeah.
And people who are, vegetarian and then everything in between. But based on that, it's like, all right, there's benefits to eating meat in terms of getting protein. It's a very easy place to get it. What are the challenges that someone who is choosing not to eat meat faces?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So you can have an unhealthy vegan diet, just like you can have an unhealthy, standard
Omnivorous
diet.
diet.
Omnivorous diet, yeah, is probably a better way to phrase it. So just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're healthy. But I suppose the challenges you would face, from my perspective, is particularly if you're in the game for athletic performance, is protein bioavailability. So if you literally just Google the highest essential amino acid profile in protein and their protein bioavailability and protein digestibility, and look at a ranked list, I think the first non animal based protein comes in like 6th or 7th in the list. So it's that is, for me, in my perspective, probably the biggest challenge is looking at protein and not only making sure we're getting enough, because but particularly these days you can get enough protein, you can tick the box, but making sure that you're getting a wide variety of proteins and getting all of your essential amino acids in there as well. So I think that's number one. But that's why a lot of people that take their training very seriously and are vegan, they will supplement and they'll take things like creatine to make sure, they're getting enough creatine in their body, in their diet, if you will, and supplement with different plant-based protein sources like plant-based powders to make sure that is simply to make sure that they're getting a diverse profile of amino acids.
What was that plant that came in 6?
I believe it's legumes.
Legumes, okay.
What's the difference between legumes and pulses?
I have no idea.
Fuck, could be the same thing. So legumes, we're talking beans, lentils.
Yes. Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, they're not all created equally. So, and I think chickpeas are on there as well.
Quinoa,
Quinoa?
is that up there?
I think that's more carbohydrate.
Okay.
Yeah. I do eat quinoa. I love quinoa. Yeah. Got to soak it though.
Yeah, right. Get a little sprout going on.
Yeah. Or not so much sprouting, but just a bit of a soak.
Yeah,
Bit of
okay.
a soak, yeah. Look, I've
Okay,
never
so-
really got into that whole sprouting scene. I mean, I've read a little bit about it,
It's
but
huge.
yeah,
Bro, you don't want those phytates
yeah,
killing you. No,
Exactly.
I'm only kidding. The sprouting thing is never ending.
yeah.
Okay, so it's really about when you're choosing to go plant-based, acquiring protein is more challenging.
It can be, yeah. But I mean, I've worked with vegan clients before in the past. I've worked with one guy. He's a vegan and he's way more knowledgeable, obviously, than I am in what supplements to take and the I suppose vegan approach. And for him, I simply subscribe him macros, and he formulates his own nutrition plan based on those macros, and then I check in to make sure he's got enough nutrients. His protein is diverse enough, and his fibers up there, and he does great.
That's cool. So tell me, for someone who is, either looking to gain weight or looking to lose weight, if they're not eating adequate protein, so say they're just kind of eating whatever and they're tending to eat high carbohydrate, high fat foods, what happens to the body there?
What can happen is you can go catabolic. So sure, you may be getting enough energy, but if you're not getting enough essential aminos, eventually you will start to lose muscle, unfortunately.
Essential aminos, tell us what that is.
Yeah, so you may have heard of branch chain amino acids or BCAAs. Essential aminos, there's 9 essential aminos that your body needs. And the reason I brought up branch chain is because they're essentially, it's the same, we're talking about the same sort of thing, right?
Right.
So essential aminos, there's 9 that your body cannot get from food. So they're essential that you eat them. That's how you sort of think about it. The non-essential amino acids are those that your body can produce endogenously within, it can produce it within your body, so you don't need to be consuming them. So when I'm saying it's important to get a diverse array of essential amino acids, it's because your body needs all 9 of those to support your muscle production. Arguably, leucine is the most important because it triggers your MPS, or your muscle protein synthesis. And I think we spoke about this offline before, Joey, is when you supplement with something like BCAAs, what can happen is your body will trigger the MPS pathway, your muscle protein synthesis, but it will be in absence of the all complete 9 essential aminos that it needs to finish that process. So that can sometimes be unfavorable. But if you have something like BCAAs accompanied with like whey protein or a complete protein source, then you're good to go.
Okay. And so, and aminos is saying they are the building blocks of protein. Am I right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right. So to kind of just to summarize that, you're saying that animal protein, so animal flesh, right? Chicken, beef, pork, fish, all these things that people commonly eat.
Eggs.
Have all of the essential aminos, and therefore
more complete
therefore
profile.
are very strong sources of protein.
Correct. Yes.
Whereas when you go to plant sources, you don't necessarily get all of the essential aminos.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it just becomes more. That's where the combination of foods, some supplementation. That's where that becomes more necessary.
Exactly.
Right. I think. Do you know anyone that was converted to veganism after watching Game Changers?
I do. I got a funny story. Well, not funny because it still kind of doesn't make me mad, but when the movie came out, I know it took it took the world by storm. A lot of people got very passionate about it overnight, which I found interesting. And coming from my position where I was doing a lot of research into nutrition well before the film or doco, if you would be so kind as to call it that. Yeah, so I was doing a lot of nutrition research, and I was sitting down at I think it was a birthday dinner or something along those lines, and there was this one individual that was very adamantly informing me everything she knew about nutrition, and telling me how by eating meat I was going to get cancer and all this good jazz. And I asked her, I was like listening politely, and then I just said, "Oh, did you watch Game Changers?" And then she just paused like a deer in headlights and said, "Yeah, but it's not just Game Changers." Oh man, I'll never forget it. It was hilarious. I was like, okay, yep. And I just disengaged.
Disengaged. This conversation is
girlfriend
over.
was kicking me under the table like, don't say anything. But no, I do, and all power to you. But yeah, it's not for me personally. But
yeah. I mean, the opinion I think from a lot of people who have some knowledge or have a lot of knowledge in this area is that there was not a lot of credibility to that film. It was all very flashy, and it did. And I mean, I think personally, like if you have a desire to eat a plant-based diet, then that's an awesome thing. I do think in many ways it's more sustainable for the planet. And I think that if that is better suited to you, then great. And if that film was the catalyst, great.
Sure, yeah.
But that film really in terms
isolation,
of what is a good documentary and what is not, it is most definitely not.
If the film puts you down a pathway of researching nutrition for yourself, and then it is like the catalyst that gets you excited about it and like passionate about it, then it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love it. But if you just watch the film and then go to a dinner party and preach, then I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or you came away from, you're like, eating meat is bad and it's going to kill me and I have to stop now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You just, so long as you understand both sides and you understand the facts, or if you're up to date with the literature and it gets you excited about, looking into the science, then great. But yeah, that's my take.
Any questions from you over there, Paulie?
I didn't watch the movie. I tried to watch it twice really hard. It's too loaded. Like I can't watch a documentary, air quotes.
Yeah.
When it's that loaded for me. It was overproduced and it was Americanized for me. I was like, I immediately didn't trust it because it was too sleek.
Too polished.
I was like, okay.
Right.
That was just from I couldn't watch it because of that. But I was aware, everyone was talking about it for about 4 months before I was like, okay, I'll go and watch this thing. So I was aware of the arguments on both sides, and we had it was all happening in conversations everywhere at times. So I was like, I don't think I need to watch it at this point.
Yeah, you've gotten all the info just from the combos.
Yeah.
Legit.
So then on that, kind of final piece, and you don't have to go super deep on this, but what is for someone then that's looking to eat for performance, what are the main considerations there?
Yeah, so the main consideration when you're trying to eat for performance is trying to establish a very strong TDEE. And I know I've flogged this dead horse, but you want to figure out how many calories you need to eat to maintain. We're not interested in changing. This is hypothetically, we're talking about an athlete that is at the body weight they need to be at to compete, and they're just looking to improve their performance. So they need to make sure that they're eating the correct amount of calories. Now, if they want to take their nutrition seriously, then you look at your macro profile. You need to be eating the 2 grams and as high as 3 in very specific circumstance, but I'm just going to recommend 2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
For protein?
For protein, for protein. And for fats, 30%. And for your carbohydrate should be no less than 50% for athletic performance. You would make sure that you're at 50% plus. For endurance athletes, they can go as high as 70% carbohydrate. And that's because of the glycolytic demand from endurance exercise.
I've got a question. You spoke about the EAT. What does that stand for again?
The exercise activity thermogenesis.
Okay, so for performance, for an athlete who's training a lot, this is kind of more important. Although, as you said, it's the one that takes up or burns the less amount of calories.
Yes,
right.
For most people.
For most people.
Yeah.
So when you have an athlete who's training, how is it that you would work out how many calories you are burning in a particular workout, given that you have so many different types of working out, endurance, lifting heavy weights? That one seems a lot harder to measure.
It's incredibly difficult.
How do you go about that?
So I would average it out. And I take a very similar approach for cutting as well. You would figure out what the load is for a week. Because your body doesn't really understand what a 24-hour cycle is apart from, your sleeping cycles. What I'm trying to say is your body can't tell the difference between what you eat today versus tomorrow when it comes to a week time frame. So long as your calories are you're sustaining your calories, you're eating the required amount of calories over a week long period, you're good to go. So from workout to workout, it's less important. Now you can do something called carbohydrate cycling, where you eat more carbohydrates on your higher demand days and less on the other days to balance out the week. I personally don't subscribe to that. I prefer to just keep things simple and eat on average throughout the week, making sure you're eating the amount you need to sustain.
How do you differentiate a high demand day, from an endurance runner to, how do you measure that? Do you use heart rate, or is there ways in which you can basically put that on a scale and say this or is it more like effort, a heavy lifting day, say people say, or...
Yeah, so if I suppose you guys would know more about this than I would. If you compare something like endurance work, but someone's very adapted to running, and then all of a sudden you take that same athlete and then you get them to lift heavy compound weights for, I suppose, an hour, that combined with their afterburn, they might be burning more calories, particularly if they're specifically adapted to running. So for me working with athletes, I just average things out. I don't worry about carbohydrate cycling. That's not something that I personally subscribe to. But so long as we have an understanding over a week period, then we're good to go. So in the nutrition world, things work a little bit slower. We don't work... Well, me personally, I don't work day to day. I work in week to month chunks because we need to let someone's body adapt. And you may put someone's numbers for an athlete. You may put someone's numbers into a TDEE. You tweak it as required. You do all the calculations under the sun, but then it just does not work for them. I've worked with clients before that are looking for performance. I expected them to be burning about 3,000 calories, and they're more like 3,500 or greater. Per day. So it depends. It depends on the individual. So we start with the baseline and then we work from there.
Yeah, it makes sense for normal people, and I look at myself as normal, even though I train more than the average person.
Yeah.
To average it out over the day. I guess the cycling and stuff, I hear that for high level athletes, like people playing in the NBA who are playing 3 games a week, and they have to be more mindful about heavy training sessions, games recovery. Then there's a lift session that's at a high intensity. So, I guess it gets really technical when you get to, because for performance, when it's like, it's different for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because it's like fight day.
Yeah.
As it is for like someone who's in a season, it's different. They're playing 3 games a week, or an NRL player who just plays 1 game a week.
Yeah.
And that's so, it gets really technical on those levels, hey?
Yeah, and then when it comes to like, and that's when you get really into, I suppose, the niches, right?
Yes,
So it's going to be different, like you said, for someone playing NRL versus NFL versus jiu-jitsu, and they're different. They have different demands. Like if you're working with a powerlifter, you probably, you're not really worried about having their carbohydrate too high, because they're not doing a lot of endurance work. But if you're working with an endurance athlete, you're going to be looking at maybe up to 70+% of carbohydrate and different carbohydrate sources as well. So yeah, that's where it gets really nuanced, particularly those that are interested in endurance. If you look up the ISSN position stand on carbohydrate for endurance athletes, it's a bit of a lengthy sciencey read, but if you're into that space, it's a must if you want to level up your nutrition. Definitely recommend that one.
I probably won't read it.
No, this podcast is all we need.
Yeah. Boil it down for me.
I heard a good
I'll summarize it.
a way it was framed to me by that same Vela, Evil Genius, about carbohydrate, like nutrient timing.
Yeah.
Whereas like, do you eat carbohydrates after training or before training, or do you wait and you have them at night? He's like, it doesn't fucking matter. He said, your physiology doesn't know what time of the day it is.
100%.
And he's like, if you look at, you trained that day, but you also probably trained yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to train tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So he's like, you are perpetually in a cycle of recovery and rebuild and recovery and rebuild. He's like, so you just eat, like you just get the nutrients in.
100% agree.
Which I think really speaks to what you're saying, where it's like, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Unless you are whatever, like you need these like little 2% things to like get the optimal result for a competition.
That's the difference. I'm not working with Olympic athletes or someone on Tour de France, and I think that's those 1%ers is what really separates it at the upper echelon. But for someone that considers himself an athlete or someone that's training as regularly as you are, Paulie, if you are averaging it out, you're gonna get in that ballpark, and that's good. For
sure. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've recently been listening to this basketball strength and conditioning coach, and he coaches a lot of people in the NBA, and they were talking about this sort of stuff, and it just didn't occur to me, like, because here we play sport, we do martial arts, it's like rugby and ball sports like every weekend for a season.
Yeah.
But those basketball players, holy shit, they have to dial it in because they travel and they play 3 games a week at the highest levels.
It's so hard.
And then they have to maintain power, and they're doing fucking heavy lifting sessions straight after a game, so they have 2 days to recover for the next game, which is 3 days later. That's when it's like dialed in. You know what I mean?
That's
like
pretty gnarly.
Yeah, just that high frequency of performance there is tough.
So, like, let's say I've listened to this episode. I'm like, okay, yeah, got it. Like, I want to lose a bit of weight, so I'm going to just punch in my numbers and go 500 calories under. Sweet, got the protein thing dialed in.
Yep.
You know what? I'm prepared to give this a good nudge. I'll go hard Monday to Friday, and then weekends I'll do what I want. Does that work?
No. So there's I love that leading question.
I love Joe's questions today.
Yeah, he's like,
I'm the average guy. Yeah. What if it was me?
Yeah, the eyebrow raise at the end was great. So there's a really interesting there's a really interesting infographic that talks about this perfectly, and it's called the Weekday Dieter, and it shows in, I suppose, graph form what happens when you do that approach. So if you work your ass off through the weekday, you train hard, your nutrition is 100% adherence. You get to the weekend, you're like, I've earned this, I'm just going to fucking blow out. I'm going to eat in surplus, I'm going to eat like 4,000 calories. All of a sudden, like we've said, if you average out your week, you're now in a calorie surplus. You have blown out your entire week, unfortunately.
Because it can take one or 2 days of going over.
Yes.
To essentially add like an eighth or a ninth day's worth of food, you're saying?
Exactly. So now you're trying to compensate for an entire day worth of food. For the people that I coach, the biggest one for this is alcohol. And I try and give like contextualize it for them, particularly if someone's in a calorie surplus throughout the week and maybe they're feeling a little bit hungry, maybe we're 6 weeks into the card or what have you, and then all of a sudden they're just smashing beers on the weekend. A 6-pack of beer is worth like a loaf of bread. So imagine sitting down and eating a loaf of bread. Which would you rather do? I'm not saying you should, but I'm just saying. I'm just trying to paint the
6
picture.
6 beers is worth a loaf of bread. And I mean, man, I talk to, I think for a lot of our people, like they probably they don't drink a huge amount of alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's not uncommon at all. People even that come through this gym, you ask them how many drinks they go, I go a couple nights a week. How many drinks do you have? And they're like, 20.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck. Like that is a huge amount of energy.
That's over a day of eating. That's you're smashing it. You're going hard.
So 20 drinks potentially could equal a whole day's worth of
easily
energy intake.
Very easily. It's the same that we could talk about liquid calories
Mixed drinks as well.
Oh yeah, mixed drinks.
Yeah.
You're going with like the Coke.
Midori Illusion.
I've no
Get
idea.
a jug of that. That was like the new shit when we were 18.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit.
If you want to try and
Not
talk to a
denying
table full of girls, you'd go with a jug of Illusion. Ladies.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I never bought one in my life. But yeah, okay, so it is very easy to just undo everything. And I guess coupled with that,
you're working so hard. Why would you shit the bed? If you want to have something, right? If you want to say you really like ice cream, instead of going for Ben and Jerry's, go for Halo Top or something like that with lower
high
calories.
protein, low calorie one.
Yeah. If you want a cheat meal, maybe have sushi instead of, smashing burgers or whatever, or and
Or go to grilled burgers. Kieran, for a cheat meal, Kieran goes to grilled.
Oh, yeah.
After the last comp, I was like, bro, did you like go and eat? He's like, fuck yeah, man. I went and had burgers. I was like, where'd you go? He's like, I went to grilled. And I'm like, bro, grilled are like the healthiest burgers you can get. It's like a sandwich.
You get those discs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's like, no, I had the traditional bun and everything.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
like,
Wow.
chips. He's like, I had chips.
I had a small chips.
I'm like, wow, bro, what a blowout. But going there versus going to McDonald's or going to
100%.
KFC or going to like BL Burger or like one of these like
Yeah.
big junky fucking high calorie, but like it's two very different kettle of
But
fish.
even
isn't
if
it?
you do, look, say if you do go to Macca's, you have a Big Mac, so what? Like, just have the Big Mac and leave it. And don't count the calories on the rest of the weekend if you don't want to, but just eat in moderation. So
Yeah.
long as your calories are under or, within that same range, you're good to go. If you can have cheat meals, if you account for them, it's okay. It's not a cheat meal. It's a meal that you want to enjoy, right? So long as you're not, throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just saying fuck it and go on a rampage.
I'm off the rails now.
You're off the rails, and then you reel it in on Monday morning because you feel really guilty. That's a perpetual cycle that's not healthy for you psychologically either.
How about clearing up the other corner, which is I did really well during the week.
Yeah.
Smashed a bunch of drinks.
Yeah.
So I probably blew it out a little bit, but I'll just go for a run the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Does not equal.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I got up and did push-ups and sit-ups.
I
I'm
did
good.
that. 20
That's
drinks.
Yeah.
You'd have to probably run back-to-back marathons, but again, you don't want to punish yourself for the food. If you're
Training doesn't actually account for that much.
What's the saying?
Expenditure, does it?
Yes.
no, not at all.
Like it's way easier to drink the calories than it is to exercise them out.
oh yeah, it would take you an hour to drink exercise out like a beer, or 2 beers.
Wow.
So it's like what 300 calories in 2 beers,
Right.
Depending on the beer, obviously. And what in an average session, say you're going, semi-hard, you maybe burn about 300 calories.
Fuck, it's brutal.
Bro, it's Friday today as well. And, I'm probably going to have a beer tonight.
Friday,
I'm
bitches.
like not going to enjoy it so much tonight.
Oh, I don't feel guilty, Paulie. It's-
I like Luke Tulloch, who we had on the show a couple of times. Very jacked, very lean individual. He's a scientist. He's, this is what we're talking about today is his realm. But he's like, every Friday I like to go and meet a mate and we get wings and beers at the Newtown Hotel. And that's his thing. Every
Yeah,
Friday he
for
does
sure.
that. But he makes room for it
In his
the whole
macros.
week. He
Yep.
makes sure he gets his 20,000 steps a day.
Yep.
I think whatever he's eating on a Friday is all geared towards giving him that space.
Yeah.
So he can have this blowout meal and a couple of beers.
Yeah.
And he's probably not having 10 beers, right? He probably has 2.
You probably enjoy it more as well. 'Cause you don't feel guilty about it. You're avoiding all of that bad food relationship business,
totally.
and you fucking enjoy yourself. Why not? Like, do it. If you're putting in the work, you can definitely enjoy yourself.
Yeah, this is an interesting psychological part of this kind of whole discussion.
Yeah.
I find with a lot of people, like friends of mine who just eat make pretty poor food choices all the time.
Yeah.
Like every day they go to the cafe, every night they get Uber Eats. You know, maybe they go home to their parents' house for a home cooked meal once or twice a week, but essentially they're just eating fucking junk food all the time. But when I talk to them, I'm like, you know, and you know, whatever, I might be talking about how I'm fasting and how I'm eating, you know, like I'm eating food that is slightly less exciting every time, but it's clean and I feel rewarded by that. And they're like, oh, you know, like that fucking sucks though. But I'm like, man, I've done that. Like I've eaten out every night of the week and that's not fun either because you don't value it. It's just another takeaway meal.
Yeah,
and you're like,
totally.
I don't even give a fuck about this Thai food I'm about to eat because I had whatever Chinese yesterday and Mexican the day before that. Whereas it's like if once a week, you know, or every now and again you go out to a place, you're like, you value it much more, don't you?
Oh, 100% agree. I 100% agree. So yeah, just speaking from personal experience, like I have cheat meals. I'm not like a fucking super robot. I'm not like a, you know, I'm not sticking to this rigidly. I've got to count every fucking grain of rice and whatever. I mean, I have cheat meals, but when I do, I account for them.
Have you had anything worse than grilled in the last 3 months? Anything more cheaty than that?
Yes, I
Tell
have.
us about it.
Is this one of those weird like things where I describe me eating food to you? That's like that's a legit thing. I got into this like it wasn't for that long, but when I was like deep in the hole of competing in bodybuilding, I used to watch YouTube videos of people eating, and that's when you know you have a fucking problem, man. You're like, nah, none of that. So I'm getting these vibes from you, Joey.
A little bit of that. Take you there.
Describe.
Indulge me.
No, so from time like I allow Uber Eats once per week, and generally I choose on 1 week and maybe my girlfriend chooses the other week, and I mean she likes burgers, not a fan of grilled. She's probably in your camp, thinks they're healthy, so she wants to splurge, and I mean sometimes she gets like fucking pizza or burgers or whatever, and I go along for a ride not to rock the boat. Because at the end of the day you don't want to be, you're trying to maintain a relationship as well. You don't want to be like, no, it doesn't fit my macros, I need to eat this.
Pizza fucking sucks though. It's hard to get the protein numbers with pizza.
Oh, I do not try and get the macros for those types of meals. You just get calories. If you are ballparking calories, you're good to go.
Right.
So if I can ballpark my calories within about 10 to 15%, I'm happy.
So
And I'll
you'll
live with that.
prioritize the calories over the macros.
Yeah, 100%. You do not try and match macros when you're allowing for a cheat meal. It will break your brain.
Yeah, right.
It's not worth it because you're always going to get way over fat and carbs. So it's not worth it unless you're picking sushi and you can control.
Still pizza. It's like pretty clean. It's
What
not
do you
like,
mean it's clean? What universe is that clean?
I mean, you talk about, you know, Tiora going to fucking Messina. He'd eat, I don't know, 3 scoops in a thing, and then he'd order the milkshake, and then he'd have another 2 scoops, and then he'd buy like a litre tub to take home to the family. But before he'd even made it back
He's
to
a
body,
sweet tooth
he'd
for
eaten the whole litre in the car. Like that's some fucking. I want to hear that shit.
Nah, none of that. That ain't me, dog.
You can tell when you look at the guy, he's in great shape.
Oh, thanks, man.
A puffy jacket on though.
Yeah. I
See
can-
that? It's under there.
It's not even. That's a tight jacket. That's the fucking. That's the striations. Yeah.
Is this being filmed? Or?
Man, look, that was immense. We'll wrap it there because we've gone 90 minutes, and I told you we'd be done by 3. But I think we could very comfortably get you back on again to maybe we can talk more on the performance piece and
Oh, I'd love to.
the
Yeah, that'd be
recon
great.
piece. Like go into the reads with that. But I think like from that chat today, some really good takeaways for folks regarding like, okay, if I'm looking to, let's just summarize that for them. So if I'm looking to lose weight,
Yeah.
I want 500 calories under,
About there, yep.
around,
Yep.
give or take. I want 2 grams, like we could be anywhere from 1.4 to 3.2, but let's say 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Yep.
And then I want to get 30% of my calories from fat.
Yep.
And then whatever's left over from my TDE is my carbohydrates.
Bring it in.
And then for weight gain, it was really the same, but flipping and going into a 500 calorie surplus.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
No real change to the macros in that
No
situation.
real change. You can push your fats a bit higher, and that comes down to personal preference. You can jack up those fats to about 40% if you want to, but there's no need.
But then you take from the carbohydrate, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not trying to exceed that
Yes.
limit.
Yeah.
What and where's the people can do this using MyFitness? Like they don't need to know these numbers. They can just jump onto MyFitnessPal.
Yep.
That can calculate their TDEE for them, and then they can customize the percentages of the macronutrients within there, can't
Yes,
they?
you can. If you get the paid version of MyFitnessPal, you can change your macros. If you can't, you can only deal with calories. I'd recommend...
Nah, the free version you can change macros.
Oh, you can?
But only by multiples of 10%.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, you can manipulate it by 10%.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Or no, sorry, by 5% increments.
Oh,
Right, you
right.
can't go in between.
So, okay, right. So you need to go to the whole 5%.
Yeah.
So then I would recommend
I know because I've been on the free one for years.
scrimping that freebie. Yeah, so I'd recommend jumping onto tdecalculator.net, punching in your numbers, getting out your TDE and going through, writing out your macros based on what we've spoken about, and punching those macros into MyFitnessPal and going from there. Now, if you're just starting out, I'd say start with creating a nutrition plan, as in calculate it out once and try eating very similar to that for about a week or so. And then recalculate it for the next week if you want to change things up. Do it in week steps. The reason that I'm giving that advice rather than an if it fits your macro style approach is because there's so much room for error with an if it fits your macros, which, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. So go with formulating a nutrition plan on a week-to-week basis, or even 3 days, or however many days you want to pick, and go from there, rather than going it on the fly with an if it fits your macros. But yeah, MyFitnessPal is probably the best app there.
Makes sense. Where can people get at you if they want to see what you're doing and maybe chat to you about a nutrition plan or?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm most active these days on Instagram. So it's just my name, @Kieran Lefebvre. It's spelled how it sounds. Not really. It's
Lefebvre.
Yeah, Lefebvre. It's Lefevre. And I'm pretty active on YouTube these days. So today I actually just released a video all about nutrition for jiu-jitsu. So for all the jiu-jitsu players, at Kieran Lefebvre on my YouTube channel. It's about a 20-minute guide to nutrition. I talk about a lot of concepts I mentioned here, but I summarize it all in 20 minutes.
That's cool. Kieran's got an awesome YouTube channel. Kieran's a white belt who's making waves.
Four
right?
stripe
white belt, right? He's coming off that thing soon. But he's got a YouTube channel about jiu-jitsu and his perspectives on it as a white belt. It's fucking awesome. And it's actually, and you like I said, you're really good with the camera and you do good editing. So your videos are really engaging, but it's very cool to see someone who's so new to it still be able to talk about it in a way that is engaging for someone like me who's been doing it for fucking a long time.
Yeah, most of my subscribers are like brown and black belts.
Shout out, guys.
Oh, thanks for the love, fam. But yeah.
That's cool, man. Any other things you want to plug before we wrap up?
So no, that's it in a nutshell. I'm going to be doing a lot more work in the jiu-jitsu specific nutrition space over the next coming months. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out. But yeah, the YouTube is the go.
All right. Fucking awesome. Man, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
brother.
Thanks, Paulie.
Good chat.
Thanks, Paulie.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks to Panavore. We were drinking their coffee today. Didn't shout them out at the beginning, but big love to those dudes. I tried a new change to the Joey sandwich today. It was the meatloaf and the eggs. I'll tell you more about it next week, but just to let you know, there's variations on the Joey sandwich. So if you do find yourself at Panavore Cafe, ask them about the options that are available, not on the menu. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next week.